Hi, everyone. Sounds like you can hear me. I'm Dana Grinshpan, and I'm really excited to talk about a project that I had a lot of heart for, how we are working to make McDonald's world famous in chicken. But a little bit of background. The consumer preference for chicken in the world is growing. Based on our data from Euromonitor, we're expecting between single and double-digit growth in the sales of chicken over the next 5 years. And in fact, for the first time in McDonald's history, our sales in chicken has surpassed our sales in beef. And that's pretty hard to do. And it's for good reason. Chicken, as a format, is highly versatile. It can be dressed up or down with spices, marinades, coating systems. There's different formats. There's a lot of variety. It's also considered to have a bit of a health halo. It's considered a lean protein source, and when we did consumer research, we found that when you compare it to beef, it's seen as more healthy. But there's a tension here. Ooh. McDonald's, our legacy, is in beef. When the McDonald's brothers started in 1948 and introduced the speedy service system in the restaurants, they were selling burgers, fries, and shakes for 15 cents. By 1963, we sold 1 billion beef burgers. And in 1994, that grew to 95 billion. And why am I using 1994? It's because we stopped counting after that. We sold so much beef. And so there's a tension here for us as a business. If our legacy is in beef, where do we make a brand in chicken? And so we've been working on that for a number of years. Our first foray into chicken was actually the McChicken, but it's not the McChicken you're sampling today that has the bun, the chicken patty, the lettuce, and mayo. It was actually a bone-in chicken offering that had a wing, a thigh, a drumstick with a side of coleslaw. We introduced that in the early 1970s, and as our CEO, Chris Case, says, our menu is Darwinian. We never rolled this out to national restaurants, and it never became a top seller for us. On the other hand, what did were Chicken McNuggets, which you're also sampling today. Chicken McNuggets were developed by our corporate executive chef, Renee Arend, in 1983, and became a national hit in the United States. It then rolled out to markets in Canada, the UK, France, and Germany, and is now a global jewel for our business. It is one of our top-selling items, and globally, we estimate, based on data from a couple of years ago, that we sell 27 billion Chicken McNuggets globally every year. That's 3.5 Chicken McNuggets per person on Earth. And so today we have a lot of icons in chicken. In addition to Chicken McNuggets and the McChicken is our second top-selling item. We also have the McSpicy, which is not available in North America. It's not here in the US or Canada. It is available in Asia. It's been a gangbuster in Asia for us for a number of years, for over 20 years. And it's a spicy chicken sandwich that has a spice and the marinade and the coating. We also have McCrispy, which has recently been rebranded here in the US and has rolled out as a new chicken icon across Canada, South Korea, and the UK. And so knowing this, that we've had a strong legacy in chicken, we are continuing to think about ways to build it. And in addition to our icons, we have all different types of formats in chicken where we have made innovation, where we have tested. And so this has brought us to really an opportunity and an impasse. Knowing the strength of our global system in chicken and all of these different menu options, what should our path forward be in chicken? If chicken is king, what is the next step for us? And so, over the last few years, we've been in a process with Dig Insights to develop a multi-research process for unpacking chicken. And over the last few years, we've been working hand in hand. So in 2020, let me go back. In 2020, we've been looking to understand the QSR landscape. So we wanted to know, okay, where does McDonald's fit within chicken? What are the top drivers of choice for chicken? And what is our main opportunity? We looked at near-in competitors, like you think a Burger King, a Wendy's, but we also looked at chicken specialists. We then tried to understand what is our brand in chicken. So when you think about how consumers make choices for chicken when they go to a restaurant, where does McDonald's stack up? What are we known for? And what we found is that we're really famous for our affordability and consistency. So when we think about our brand in chicken, how far can we extend and where our opportunity is, we need to fit within our brand identity. And finally, our most recent research, and what we're going to talk about today, is in our portfolio. So knowing the strength of our entire global portfolio, what needs to exist on a menu to optimize choice for our customer? Where's the incrementality in the additions of menu items for us? And so we've been working with DIG to really think about, okay, if we were to design the best chicken menu for our customer, what does that look like? And what the research that has really allowed us to do is answer several stakeholder questions. So we had numerous questions from our markets as well as our global team to really get at every single thing we could possibly get at, to have a single source of truth for a strategy on chicken. So first we wanted to understand, where does spicy play? Is spicy additive to our menu, or does it just cannibalize what we're already world famous for? Is there an opportunity to expand into different formats? Bone-in, boneless wings, bites, tenders. Are those incrementally valuable to our menu? Or when we add them, are we just cannibalizing our own sales? And then finally, Chicken Big Mac, which has recently launched in Canada. We wanted to understand, is that also additive to our menu, or is it stealing share from our beef Big Mac? Is it raising the profile of chicken? Or is it highly substitutable? And finally, knowing that we're world famous for affordability and consistency, what about a top-tier multi-sensorial chicken sandwich with lots of toppings, a gourmet bun, a gourmet sauce? Is there a place on our menu for that? So we've taken all of these questions and we really partnered with DIG to design a robust study to help us answer that. So with that said, I'll let Michael take it away with the technical magic.
All right, awesome, thank you, Dana. If anyone didn't get any McDonald's chicken, I apologize. If you did get it, I still apologize. I'm Canadian, so we have to apologize. It's part of our brand standards. We get briefed as we leave on the airport. We have to apologize for everything. Hopefully I do a good job and I don't need to apologize for my presentation. As we worked with McDonald's to address their innovation questions that Dana just outlined, we chose to use the Upside platform, which is a proprietary tech platform that Dig Insights developed. The core idea behind Upside and a lot of the work that we do at Dig is that choice occurs in context. And that probably doesn't sound like anything, so I'll explain what it means. What it means is that if I choose to go to a McDonald's, I'm also choosing to forgo numerous other food and beverage options, many of which are represented in the room here. And then once I'm in a McDonald's, when I'm ordering from the menu, I'm ordering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things off the menu. I'm choosing to forgo dozens of things that are also on the menu that I choose not to order. So we all understand this to be true. The choices, the trade-offs that we make, the selection and deselection that we make, but we don't think that this is often represented well in research. In research, we tend to show, here's a new menu item. What do you think of it? Do you like it? Would you order it? Does it seem tasty? Does it seem healthy? We ask all these questions, but we're ignoring the broader context in which that decision to order that or to not order that needs to occur. So I'm going to show you how Upside addresses this. Hopefully the video works. Yep, it is working. So this is what we call the idea screen exercise. So someone is seeing McDonald's items, they're seeing competitive items, in-market items, potential innovations. If they like an item, they swipe right. If they dislike an item, they swipe left. We've chosen to give a description. We've chosen to give a price. Once people have gone through that exercise, they've basically created their consideration set. So it's all the stuff that they would swipe right on. Those are the things I would consider ordering. They're now forced to choose and to trade off between items, because we recognize that I might like 20 things. I'm probably not going to order 20 things, at least on an individual visit. What are the actual trade-offs that I'm going to make? It's a very simple exercise, but it gives us a lot of really rich data that we can then model. I'm going to show you in a second what that data means. I mentioned that we focus a lot on context and choice and trade-off at Dig. We do still recognize that there is a role for attitudes. So I'm not going to play this entire video, but this shows how someone is now being shown a single item. So this is the Chicken Big Mac innovation. They're answering a bunch of attitudinal questions about that. We do value these, but we treat them as a way to understand why someone chose or didn't choose something, as opposed to being predictive of in-market performance directly. If anyone finds this weird or whatever, I'm happy to talk at our booth. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a few of the ways that we can analyze this data. The first and easiest is a straight ranking. So you'll see here there's 3 numbers for each menu item. We've blurred out the menu items. I'm sure you can understand why. So on the right, there's interest. That's the percent that swiped right. And then trade-off, the percent that later chose that item in a subsequent trade-off. So you can see the first item's at a 67% of people swiped right on it, and then a 59 in trade-off. So the trade-off is a head-to-head. It's always going to average to 50%. So 59 is higher than you would randomly expect. So Dana mentioned a moment ago that one of their key questions coming into this research was about McSpicy, which has done really well in some markets, not yet available in the US. What we found from this is that McSpicy, as an idea, people aren't sampling the burger, which is apparently delicious. I've not had it. But McSpicy ranked in the middle. So it wasn't top, it wasn't bottom, it was somewhere in the middle. But we did learn a little more nuance behind that because we tried a few variations of McSpicy. And the variations that included lettuce and tomato, things like that, tended to outperform the ones that were just about the patty. So that gives us some information that we can then use in the future as we sort of iterate and continue to develop the McSpicy idea. The other thing that we learned with McSpicy that was interesting is that the core target for it was what we call dads, which is middle-aged men with kids, which is a little different than the stereotypical view we have of spicy items being about young men. It was actually about a little bit older men, maybe trying to relive their youth by having a spicy burger at McDonald's. So that was the simplest view, where we just straight rank things. I mentioned that there is interest, which is swipe right, and there is trade-off, which is choice in that subsequent trade-off. We can break those 2 measures down and get some interesting nuance here. So interest here is the vertical axis, trade-off is the horizontal axis. So I'll start here in the very top right. Let me see if this thing works. So up here. So these are things that a lot of people swiped right, a lot of people liked it, and they tended to choose these items in subsequent trade-offs. So these are what we call winners. They're the really strong items. So you can see, first of all, that McDonald's has 2 items in the winners quadrant. So McDonald's absolutely has legitimacy to play along with Chick-fil-A, along with KFC in this chicken space. Then going counterclockwise, so if you go to the left here, you can see here there's 1 McDonald's item. It is the chicken tender. So McDonald's has been surprisingly open about allowing us to share this information, which is fantastic, thank you. No, really, it's like you're just like talking in generalities. It's great that we can give some specifics here. So we have the chicken tenders here. So what this means is that a lot of people like the idea of chicken tenders at McDonald's, but when they're paired chicken tenders versus something else, they tend to choose that something else. So this is a really dangerous territory to be in, because if you do the monadic research where you're just looking at 1 item, you'll see, oh, a lot of people like this. But what you're missing is the fact that liking is relatively weak. There's not a lot of loyalty. They like it, but they'll order something else instead of that item. So that's when we can get into some hypothesizing about how to make chicken tenders more unique. So we're playing around with dipping sauces and other things that make it a little bit more unique and special and a little bit more exciting to consumers. Down here in the bottom left, so here we have the bone-in fried chicken and also the grilled chicken. They don't perform well. So they're not liked by a lot of people, and even those who like them tend to pick something else in that subsequent trade-off. So of course the learning here is that they're not a great fit with the McDonald's brand. While people like bone-in fried chicken, it's not a great fit for the McDonald's brand. And then over here on the bottom right, so this is a really interesting quadrant that we call niche or niche, depending on which way you pronounce it. So these are items that not everyone likes, but those who like them are quite motivated by them. So they tend to choose them in that subsequent trade-off. This is a really interesting innovation territory because, again, not everyone wants it, but those who want it really want it. It's going to generate some excitement, generate some buzz. And in fact, we have seen that with the launch of the Chicken Big Mac, which is there in that quadrant, where it gets a lot of social media buzz because people are really intrigued to try that item. We're getting progressively more esoteric and more complex as we go through these views. This is essentially a market structure map, and I'll just explain really quickly what it means. Essentially what it's doing is it's finding clusters of items that appeal to segments of consumers. So anyone in this room that is dealing with a chicken portfolio, this is actually a really good guide to sort of how to build an exhaustive portfolio. So you have to have spicy chicken because there's a segment of people who want a spicy chicken, There's a segment that want mainstream. Anyone feel free to take a picture. There's a segment that want top tier. They want a premium item. A segment that want bone-in. A segment that want boneless. And a segment that wants sort of a value chicken player. So the proximity of items indicates their interaction and essentially their cannibalization. Being further apart on the map means that they'll be incremental and they draw on a different consumer. So what was really interesting for us for our purposes is that the chicken Big Mac, up here in the top left, sits between mainstream and top tier, sits on the opposite side of the map from the existing Big Mac. So what that says is that chicken Big Mac is not going to cannibalize heavily from Big Mac. It is incremental to Big Mac. It is competing more with other chicken items than it is with Big Mac. And that's really important because, as all of you know, cannibalization is a huge issue that can really make or break your innovation efforts. Okay, nearly done here. The last thing that we can do is we can model all of this data and we can turn it into a share of choice projection. The reason we do this is we recognize that the maps, like what I showed you on the previous slide, they don't move easily outside of the insights function. Insights people get all excited about them, but if you give that to finance or procurement or some other function, it just looks like a bunch of dots. So we can take all that data and model out actual share of choice. Here, we haven't been able to share the actual data, but this is basically taking the premium chicken sandwich that we included in our test, giving it a share of choice number there. So we're saying what share would it have in market? But then just as important, or maybe even more important, we can say where is that volume coming from? So you can see here that most of the volume is actually coming from competition. It's not taking a lot from McDonald's. That's at the macro level. We can then break it down to the item level, which is what we're doing here. And we can actually see here that what it's doing is it's trading people up from less expensive McDonald's items to more expensive McDonald's items. So even though there is some cannibalization, it's actually a net positive in terms of check size. So this is my final slide. The last thing that we're able to do, previously we were looking individually at items. Now we're modeling the menu holistically. So we're looking at every possible combination of current items and potential innovations and saying, what's the most efficient way that McDonald's can maximize reach, maximize the percent of consumers who are interested in one or more McDonald's item. And we do that in two steps. First of all, we say, what's the number of items you need to have? Where does reach plateau? And then within that number, what's the right mix? And we can look at thousands and thousands of possible mixes and identify the strongest ones. I'm going to pass it back to Dana to summarize.
Yeah, thank you. So in summary, I think a lot of business leaders will look at maybe one thing in a research study to help make a decision, whether that's performance, brand, or incrementality. And what we really have learned is that we have to look at all of these things holistically together to help us make strategic decisions about our menu moving forward. We might see that a menu item is a top performer when it comes to a test. Chicken tenders, we saw, rose to the top. But if we don't have the brand credibility to extend in other chicken formats, then it's not likely to be successful for us. And so this equation of preference and performance with credibility is a key consideration for us. It's also the same reason you don't see a bucket of chicken on our menu in the US today. Incrementality also is a key indicator. What that essentially says is that if we add a menu item to our menus, we're going to see incremental value in dollars. But if we're seeing that that incrementality is cannibalizing from our own sales, then that's also not a wise decision for our future. And so it was truly looking at all of these things together that gave us confidence and a single source of truth to really help make decisions on what our strategy is going to be in the future and how we're going to become world famous in chicken. So thank you.
I don't know if we were told if we could do questions or not. Can we do questions? Or?
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Awesome.
You just yelling.
How do you go get the consumers to engage in taking that survey or going through that? Is it through very specific markets you're choosing to go after? Is it through like your McDonald's app when they purchase? Like, what are the ways that you guys are getting those consumers engaged?
Yeah, great question. So it is possible for clients, if you do have a base of consumers, like a panel of consumers through the app, to send people to one of our studies. We do also have an API integration with global panels. So it is possible to say, I want to, men or women or whatever, this age in Korea, South Korea, not North Korea, in South Korea or China or Japan or France or Canada or the US, you would just specify that as we would do it for you if we set up a study for you. It is also possible to do it DIY and just specify who you want to speak to and then issue the study to those people. They've signed up saying that they're willing to do research. They would get an email with a link. They would click on the link, and it basically looks like an installed app on your phone, even though it is a web app.
There you go.
So you talked about the spicy chicken sandwich being big in the Asian countries, but you don't have it in North America. But throughout North America, we have a lot of Chinatowns and Korean towns and whatnot that are very Asian-based. Does McDonald's or would McDonald's consider doing like something like that in those communities that have that culture in them?
Yeah, so actually, we do have a spicy chicken sandwich in the United States and in North America. It's our spicy McCrispy, where the spice is actually delivered through a sauce, whereas the McSpicy is delivered through a marinade and a coating system. And so how we make these decisions between the sauce and maybe a more sophisticated spice delivery is based on the maturity of spice in the market. And so we have to look at a market in entirety because we have thousands of restaurants that are at stake here. And so when we think about how to make those decisions, we look at the spice maturity, but we also look at, okay, what about the format that it's being delivered? Are we mature enough also in chicken to deliver that as well?
So this is a great presentation, and I grew up eating McDonald's. Kind of linked to what you're talking about here, but also just kind of a personal wish. I had the opportunity to eat McDonald's on world travels, and I noticed how well you guys adapt to the local market. Do you ever consider doing like a McDonald's Italy type mashup where like somebody could go in and you could try all the McDonald's dishes from all over the world?
So I'm going to plug our international restaurant at MHQ in Chicago. At our headquarters, you can go to a McDonald's and test different items from around the world. And so I highly suggest checking that out.
So it's your idea, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But only here in Chicago. So anyone that's not local,
It's
go
in the
before you
West
leave.
Loop.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah.
At what point do you decide you have a large enough control room to actually say this is accurate? Like, how long is that going to take?
Oh, well, in terms of length, in terms of hours, or in terms of sample size?
Like sample size.
Yeah.
There's 100 people that has very little actual.
Yeah, 100%. So it's always a little bit flexible. It depends primarily on the number of subgroups that we want to look at. So I mentioned that we looked at gender. So with the McSpicy, we found that it did better amongst middle-aged men. So there you're looking with kids. So there you're looking at 4 different sort of filters. You're looking at age, you're looking at gender, you're looking with and without kids. So when you want to be able to filter that finely, then you need a fairly large sample size. You're looking at 1,000 or 2,000 people. Other times clients are just like, you know what, we just need to make a really quick, really agile decision. We need to move like fairly inexpensively, and we'll do studies with 200 or 300 people. So it really just depends on the needs of the individual study. And in terms of, like, I'll just add, in terms of hours, you're probably looking at around 24 hours for turnaround, regardless of sample size. So if you want a larger sample size, the emails go out to more people. So that doesn't actually affect the sample size, the timing that much, unless you want a really, really niche audience, or niche.
Question for Dana. I know you talk about you have a lot of chicken sold in McDonald's. Did you promote as a brand, your chicken brand, or you just keep to McDonald's beef?
Oh, that's a great question. We have a lot of conversations about how we talk about ourselves with respect to promoting ourselves as a chicken brand or beef brand. And I will say that we really promote ourselves as a McDonald's brand. And depending on the market, we'll actually see more of our sales attributed to chicken versus beef. So in Asia, for example, especially in China, we see that we're more of a chicken market there. And so the menu items in terms of product marketing that happens in our channels will predominantly be chicken because that's what the customers want. Thanks.
This one's for you. When you do the market analysis with the thing where you're saying, I've got this chicken strips versus whatever, and they pick it at first, but then they something that McDonald's is already known for. They're known for nuggets, but not strips, right? So are people leaning towards that thing because it's something that they are familiar with versus something that is new?
Yeah, that's a really great question. You typically wouldn't expect an innovation to perform on par with an in-market item. That's true across every category because people know what they like what they like, and they remain loyal to those items. What was a little bit of a red flag with us on the tenders is that people were choosing it and then swapping it out for something else. Whereas on the Big Mac, the opposite was happening. Fewer people were choosing it, but then they were choosing to remain with it and to give up something else, either another innovation or an in-market item to get it. And we would rather see an innovation in that space where there's lower demand but higher loyalty than in the higher, broader demand but weak loyalty camp.
But on that, when you talk about the Big Mac, right, it's Big Mac versus chicken Big Mac.
Yeah, okay, so there's a bit of an equity. Yeah, absolutely.
You have a comparison that
Yeah.
you already have that.
What I would always say, though, is if you exclude marketing, so if McDonald's was to launch tenders, they could put $100 million behind it and blast it out. But at the end of the day, what you're talking about is going to happen in restaurant. I go into that restaurant, there's items that I know and love, and I have to choose that chicken tenders over those items. So even though it is a disadvantage for that innovation, it's reflective of the real world, too, where there's a disadvantage for every innovation because you've got to compete against things that people know and love. And so we wouldn't want to pretend that that doesn't exist.
But on the other hand, you don't want to completely cut it out.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you never move forward.
100%. And that's why we need to look at the results with nuance. Absolutely. Like we wouldn't, there was that first analysis screen that I showed you where it's just ranking items. We wouldn't, that's a great start, but we wouldn't want to end there and just say, oh, you didn't break into the top 10. There's no opportunities. You need to go a little bit further and see and model things out and look at share of choice and look at source of volume and incrementality and all of these sorts of things too. So, question over there.
Just a question, how do you take the data that you're looking at and work with, say, your procurement, your operations, and et cetera, to ensure that you actually have the right strategy for rolling this out to be able to think what do you need in certain markets you don't sell out? Like, how does that work?
It's a great question, and every single research study we do has to bring business leaders along for the ride. When we did this research, we did incredibly robust like buy-in exercises from the folks that we were working with. But at the end of the day, we are a customer-led business. Our goal is to understand what do customers want from McDonald's that also makes sense for us. And so if we're seeing an enormous business case for a menu item, that deserves investigation. But to your point, even if we have this data, there's going to be a long road ahead in terms of bringing everyone to the table, whether that's supply chain, operations, culinary, marketing. And so, yes, there's quite a bit of work that goes into that. So we actually didn't look at plant-based because we really wanted to think about what is the chicken portfolio. And so when we did this analysis, we did mostly our chicken menu items from across the world. So we took the entire weight of our system in terms of what's been innovated, put that into our test to really understand if we could take anything from Asia, from Europe, and put it into an optimal menu, what does that look like just for chicken?
Anyone else? My friend, yes.
How does this play into expanding your customer base? When I think of McDonald's, I think of particularly my kids, the Happy Meals and things like that, right? As a grown person, I don't eat at McDonald's as much because of my perception of McDonald's, right? And I know at one point you started introducing salads and stuff because you started saying kids' meals are selling a lot. Well, who's bringing the kids? So let's create a market that is doing it. And it seems like you guys are still expanding on some of those markets and that. What's the future for McDonald's in that type of arena and expanding to get a little bit broader reception?
Yeah. So I think what we all saw in our industry during COVID-19 is mass waves of menu simplification. And what that essentially looked like was taking different menu items off of menus that weren't selling as well, or maybe selling as much. Maybe there was a lot of love for those menu items, but they weren't necessarily our top selling. And we did that for a lot of reasons. We found that we couldn't have enough folks in the restaurants to work it. We had limited hours. But I think what a lot of restaurants saw and that we learned through that process is that a lot of our sales actually come from a core set of menu items. And so when we think about the future, there is talks about adding things back in, but we're now more cognizant than ever, given the stresses on our crew. What does that look like when we bring something back into the restaurant, knowing that they're going to have more items to consider, more items to build and cook when it comes time for sales?
When you launch an LTO or a new item in the real world, how are you able to track if it's being cannibalized by another item? What KPIs are you looking at?
So we have an amazing business insights team that looks at that kind of thing. It looks at our sales, and it looks at what are the relationships when it's compared to last year, like how is it growing? Are we seeing certain items drop in sales? Are we seeing certain items grow? And so there's a big picture that we look at when it comes to tracking that. And that's really at the market level.
Awesome. Very good. We want to thank our session here. Great questions.